Transfer student experience.
The transfer student experience.
The transfer student experience.
You are president of the Latino Business Association.
Yes, I am starting this year. I went to Loyola University, Chicago, my freshman year.
Now you're doing business admin.
Correct. So I was marketing at Loyola. I'm from LA, so it was a little bit too far, too cold. Just the whole situation was just not right, not the right fit, and then came to study business at SC.
What was the initial sort of rationale for going to Chicago, studying over there?
Yeah, well, I had a really great scholarship right out of high school. I think just knowing that most of my education was going to be paid for was just such a big incentive to go to Chicago. And I really wanted to kind of get away. And I thought that that was what I wanted. And I wanted a big city. But just growing up, born and raised in LA, we're so spoiled with great weather. And it hit December and it was way too cold. And I just really could not handle it. Even in like November, I was ready to leave. It was definitely a big change.
I'm one of those people too. I can't deal with the cold. What big career goals are you aiming towards? Working for a company? Starting your own? What does that look like for you?
I think for me, kind of, it changes a lot, definitely, from when I got to USC and kind of did some exploring myself, different career paths. But right now I'm looking into a lot of entertainment companies. I had internships at NBC Universal, and I really loved the culture at those big lot and just everything about entertainment and being in LA. I loved it. I'm hoping to work in marketing in the entertainment industry and maybe one day working up to executive level marketing. And I just love managing and leading, and kind of with my experience with other organizations on campus, I really love just having a team and kind of building off of each other like that.
And so knowing that, how do you think USC classes will contribute to that?
I think Marshall does a really great job. The business school does a really great job of providing a really well-rounded education. So for me, having organizational behavior and leadership, like that class was great. Fundamentals of marketing and just really different realms of business that you're able to go into. They also have the Corey leadership program that somebody reached out and we're doing with my Latino Business Executive Board, which I'm really excited for. So just different programs that'll just develop you as a leader, and that there's so many different options. So I think it's been super helpful. There's a lot of resources.
And so you transferred in 2018.
Correct.
So you had a taste for college life pre-COVID.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What was the most difficult part of ramping up as a transfer?
I would definitely say being surrounded, especially at SC, by so many just so driven and dedicated individuals who by sophomore year had 2 internships, 4 leadership positions, and taking 20 units. It's like everyone's just they just dive deep into everything at SC. And I think I wasn't used to that. And I understood that that's like a norm here apparently, and everyone's just really involved. So I think that for me has been pretty challenging, just trying to figure out what I wanted to get involved with, and not necessarily get involved in a million different things, but pick a few that I'm passionate about and dive deep into those. So the Latino Business Student Association was a great example, just because I was a member. I went to become VP of marketing, which I loved, and kind of explored my creative side there. And then eventually just really wanted to be president, and I worked really hard to get there. And that's what I kind of dove deep into. Yeah.
You raise an interesting point because, like you said, there is a lot of stuff going on. And that can be a challenge for some people, right? Analysis paralysis, where you just have too many options. And so what communication challenges did you face at USC when you transferred? Because I know the university sometimes doesn't do the best at communicating resources, whether it be because there's too many or not enough. And then on the student organization side, I'm sort of wondering, as you know, someone being on the executive team, what can an organization that helps transfer students do better?
Yeah, I think just students themselves, any like mentorship program and having somebody that's gone through it before has been super helpful. Like for me, just people in my classes, I would ask, and that was like the main form of getting information because they'd done it before. And just knowing that, like, even finding other organizations, like I did Greek life too. Some of my friends even asking around in those forums and kind of asking around, really. I think just it's hard to look at a newsletter and kind of pick what you want to go to. And it's hard to go to an event by yourself, and just having somebody to go to things with was also helpful. I had one friend in an accounting class. We just became close, and we were both transfers, and we both went somewhere for 1 year, and we went to all of the like recruiter receptions together, and really just finding that 1 or 2 people to kind of balance that out. And because I mean, getting an email and reading like what's available, it's a little daunting for somebody that doesn't have that community on campus yet. And you're not going to really build that if you're not like being able to put yourself out there in like classes and make a friend here and there. So I think just personally through just meeting different people and just asking around has been something that was helpful. I think I struggled more with like seeing the email and being like, oh, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like what part, like which one do I go to? Which one's going to be most helpful? Like, and it's also the timing too. So if you're studying and you have other stuff going on, it's hard to kind of get to invest that time in yourself and in your own experience. So yeah, it was just a little bit of everything, trying to figure out what would be best.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people have been saying that they would have liked a filter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether that be somebody, telling you, no, don't go to that event, go to this event. Or just, even prioritizing the inbox, to all the emails you received. Yeah, for sure. And so, I mean, what did you feel made you stand out in your transfer application? What's a point about yourself that you really drove in your essays? Being
at Loyola and being at a place where I knew I wanted to leave so quickly, they ask you, a lot of the questions are based off of why do you want to transfer, like why USC specifically. And I think for me, just the business school just drove home exactly what I wanted. And I really emphasized that not every university has the connections and the opportunities that USC provides. And I think for me, just specifically like my route in entertainment, my route in business marketing, just like the background, the behind the scenes work and entertainment is just USC, which is a great fit for me. So I think just talking about fit, and it's so hard to do. And it's like, why USC? But it could also be like, why another school in New York? Why? You could change the name and it could work for that school too. So it's just, I think finding your true reason why specifically USC was so important. I sat down and took the time to do that because I just, coming from applying to a bunch of colleges out of high school, you already know that that's a question that's asked all the time. I think just being a Trojan and just everybody being like this type of person that just is so dedicated and driven, and everybody, you're surrounded by super like-minded individuals. And in my application, I remember talking a lot about just, if you were to accept me, like, this is what I would do with it type of language. And I think for me, just I talked about a project that I really wanted to work on was in terms of marketing and just having the opportunity and resources for classes, just like bringing in, I'm Latinx, I'm a woman, like being in the entertainment industry and moving up that way was just something that I really wanted to focus on in my own career. So I talked about how USC resources could help me do that, and having a goal and knowing that like USC is going to help me get there was a lot of what my essays were. Knowing what you know now, if you could go back in time and give a younger, maybe less jaded Izzy advice, what would you tell her? Ask questions. Don't be afraid to just talk to anybody and ask questions. I think for me, that's one of my, when I'm asked in an interview or anything, like, what's a weakness of yours? Like, I think that I can do things myself, and then I'll sit there and ponder it for hours and hours and hours when I can just ask somebody for help. A lot of the times, just when I was trying to figure out what I was going to do at SC, just asking people was so helpful. Eventually I got to a point where I could be like, hey, like, have you gone to something like this? Like, would it be helpful? Just asking them that simple question was so helpful. Where I was just, instead of sitting in my room trying to figure out, like, do my own research, do an hour of research versus a question to somebody who had gone through it before. Even in like my own leadership, I have an executive board of 10 people right now. And I think sometimes I'm like, oh, like, I feel like I could do this. So I sit down and do it, but I'm already so slammed with other stuff, and just kind of delegating that and making sure that I'm using my support system. So we're provided with so many great resources, and it feels like you have to figure everything out on your own because everybody else is, and everyone else is kind of already a year or two in as a transfer, and you're seeing everybody doing great and thriving and involved in a million different things. But for me, just knowing that there's other people dealing with the same stuff. So my transfer friends are some of my best friends. You find each other kind of in classes. You're like, oh my gosh, you're a transfer. Oh my God, I have 3 other transfer friends. Like, we could all go to this event together. And just asking around and not being afraid to kind of insert yourself and introduce yourself and in classes too. Like, I struggled with that so much my first week. Like, I didn't want to talk to anybody, but I was like sitting in the back, like taking my notes, wanting to grind and get a 4.0 and not talk to anyone. But like, for just my mental sake, it was so much better to find that support system. So it's helpful to find a community. It really was. And to this day, I mean, some of my best friends are transfers, and we all still continue to kind of, people will talk about like something that happened like freshman year, like, oh, remember freshman year? We're like, no, not really. Like, I wasn't here. But yeah, I think just like that community that you find, it's a lot easier than people think, and it seems super daunting, but it definitely helps. I'm so happy to kind of be sharing this because I struggled so much with it a couple of years ago. So this is great. Thank you. Great idea. I love it. Awesome. Yeah, no worries. All right. Well, enjoy your long weekend.
The transfer student experience.